everyone. Welcome to HerdCon 2024, and you are here with our special guest, Beau Smith. Hello, Beau.
Hello.
Beau is a local to our community, living and growing up right here in the Huntington, Canova, and Westmoreland area. It's just awesome to be able to have a guest who helps to represent all of the awesome that we can be and all the things that you can do if you just get passionate about it and have a good time with it. So we love having you here today, Beau.
Oh, I appreciate you all rousting me up and making me not making me come. I tried to come with all the other years.
I know.
You know.
Yeah, we tried to have Beau in 2020, and then COVID said no.
Yes.
It was like 4 days beforehand. We were like, nope, sorry.
Yeah, it was disease.
Oh, it was rough.
Yeah.
But we made it back. So, yay. Yes, feel free to clap.
And this
We're
is the part
happy.
where everyone applauds in unison.
Yes, yes.
That's what we.
I'll pull this
Oh.
so I don't scream in it. That would be terrible. So, we've got the mic up here for anybody who would like to come ask questions too. And I am going to hand the floor to Beau here and welcome him, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Like you said, my name is Beau Smith. I've lived in Huntington area all my life. Barbersville, Huntington, Westmoreland, and in Cerrito the last 38 years. So I am definitely corn-fed and homebred. So this is my area. This is what I know. To be real honest with you, I write comic books. That's what, when people ask me what you do, I said, I'll write comic books. That's my main thing that I do and will do till I croak, probably. I don't see retirement happening because I've got something to get up for every morning. But and I want to give it to you straight. High school, junior high school, and even my time here at Marshall, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted. I've known since I was 4 years old what I wanted to do, and that was write comic books or tell stories. I knew that beyond a shadow of a doubt the first time I saw a comic book. You see the pages of static words and pictures. I saw the static pictures, but I did not know what the words said. So that was I was looking forward to first grade. But I was drawn to it. I can't explain it even to this day. You can put any kind of mysticism, fate, or just faith in God that this was what I was put here to do in as a job. But I was really one ticked off kid though that first day of first grade because I was going expecting to come home that evening and know how to read all those comic books I had, and I was none too happy that when I got home, my mom, oh, how was school? They didn't teach me to read. Well, you didn't expect to do it in one day. Yes, I did. And I was not happy about that. But as the school year went on, I got to find out. And thanks to Stan Lee, who most creative effort at Marvel besides him and Jack Kirby, was not only did I learn to read, but I learned to look up the words I didn't know. So when I got to school and there were words that I didn't know, I looked them up. The dictionary was my friend. In fact, there were nights where I would sit and read the dictionary, just because I wanted to learn new words that I could insult my friends with, and they would go, "Huh?" And it was a good thing. It was good motivation. But I've known what I wanted to do. And I've written video games for Capcom Video. I did Maximo and Maximo Army of Zen. But I told them at that point, I haven't played a video game since Pong. So, but they said, no, it's a screenplay. We want you to tell a story. But that's when video games were starting to add more backstory to the characters and everything. And at that point, I knew not me in particular, but anyone that was young enough to be a kid or even younger, they were going to have a job if they wanted writing video games. Everything, technology was just kickstarting then. So it told me When I was a kid, I'll tell you this, I'll sidetrack a little bit. Every boy wanted to be a cowboy, an astronaut, in my case, a milkman, because I thought I would drive around that cool 50s truck and drink chocolate milk all day. Girls wanted to be teachers, nurses, things like that. It was just the standard thing. But if you're 50 and below, a whole new world, has opened up. I mean, when I was in school, and let's take Marshall since we're here, everybody told me, like, what do you want to do? I want to write. Well, to do that, you're going to have to be in journalism because you're going to have to write for a paper, a magazine, if you really want to do a feature type thing. But no one, or serious literature, English literature, American literature, to learn the craft. But it was still not understood. That wasn't what I wanted to do. I really didn't want to tell the facts, which Professor Arnold and Turner, two great teachers I had here, actually took the time to take me aside and go, we deal in facts, you deal in fiction. You need to be, because they'd actually took the time to read a little bit of my fiction at that time, which was terrible, but I think it gave them more of a shoving point of, we got to get him out of here. But they guided me counseling wise to the kind of stuff that I needed to be studying, need to be looking at and doing. And I will always be extremely grateful for that because I did not have a lot of that growing up in the 60s and 70s. You didn't have, and nothing against teachers or anything, but they just didn't know that, somebody from a small town in West Virginia could write for comic books, for television, for films, anything like that. So I've got to be a part of television with Winona Earp, a series that, well, actually, I created it in 6th grade. Instead of doing my math homework, I would write stories about Wyatt Earp fighting the universal monsters, Frankenstein, Wolfman, Dracula. And that's why I went to summer school every year for math, because I was so busy writing those stories. And in probably 95, I said, I need to put this out as a comic book, because by that point I was in comics. I was already in the business. I was vice president of marketing for Eclipse Comics, Image Comics, Todd McFarlane Productions, McFarlane Toys. So I was already in the business, on the business end, because marketing was something that I'd been in with my regular jobs all those years. And at that point, it was still, you had to have a week to week check. And freelance writing is a roller coaster. You're up, you're riding high, it's great. And then 2 months later, it's, what can I sell in this house to make the mortgage? So it was one thing that I kept up. But the hard part about it was there was nothing then, but you all, and I say you all because everybody looking to this crowd right now, I don't see anybody older than me. So technology has become your friend. When I broke into the industry, I was buying 10 comic books a week, and I would go home at night, read the comic, and then write a letter to the editor and the assistant editor, trying to use my wit and charm and have a little constructive criticism in the letter as well to get their attention. And I would sign my full name, Stephen Scott Beau Smith, because I kept thinking, how can I set myself apart from these guys in New York, Los Angeles? They're writing letters in and getting attention that, they're not going to look at, well, this guy, stump jumper from West Virginia. That was the stereotype that was looked at upon that time. So I tried to do that, and it actually started to work in the aspect that I had 300 letters printed in comics. I started going to conventions and introducing myself to the editors, which used to come to the conventions back then, and the creators as well. Not so much that the creators could give me a job, they weren't the ones doing the hiring and firing, but if they had any tips of what can do, and there were Walt Simonson, a very famous Marvel creator, and DC as well. Mike Barron, who created Nexus the Badger and the Punisher, not created the Punisher, but did the Punisher. All these guys gave me the time out of their schedule. And that's just a few of them. They didn't have to. They didn't know me from anything. I just called them up out of the blue. And they would send me what a plot looked like, what a script looked like, what editors look for and stuff. And that was a big deal. I mean, that was a huge thing for me. I was working minimum wage job here in the area. I knew that wasn't going to go very far. And I got to be honest with you, not to get any reality shows, but at that time I was divorced from my first wife. I wasn't living with my son, and I found myself on the tailgate of my pickup truck out in the parking lot of the place I worked, thinking this ain't going to go anywhere. This. It was one of those threw up against the wall moments in life, and I said, maybe I should do this comic book stuff and at least give it a shot. What did I have to lose at that point? And all the time I'd spent here at Marshall, everything Arnold and Turner told me, and the classes where they shoved me into, not shoved me in a bad way, but shoved me in a good way. How can I put that stuff to use? And I started doing that. That's when I started sending the letters. And at that time, I started. My son Dana and grandson Andrew were here in the crowd, and I started dating Dana's mother. And it was a whirlwind romance. We were married soon after that, a few months. I mean, it was right. But one of the things that did it was she was from day one. She goes, well, do it. This is what you want to do it. She supported me from day one. And having a family member or a friend support you, with encouragement was huge. And I felt at that time I was free to really go at it now. Have I had all the family responsibilities dangling over me, but at that same time I got a job as the VP of marketing for Eclipse Comics, which is in Santa Rosa, and which was uncalled for in that time of technology. I met with them in Washington, D.C. At a Booksellers Association meeting. Got in by hook or crook because they didn't leave me a tag or anything to get in. So I had to make up stories to get upstairs to where the conference was being held. And that alone was what got me the job. Because if you can do that, you can talk some of these distributors who are not pushing our books into, you can get them to sell them. So without just being my lying, cheating self, no, just be my creative self, I was able to get that job. And that was working out of my house, actually out of our bedroom in Cerrito, which was half desk, half bed. And I had a telephone in there. There were no fax machines. There was nothing else. You had FedEx. And I started making myself an Eclipse known to every distributor we had, every retailer I could find a phone number for. And this was me calling them up and just giving them, making a relationship and a rapport with them. And I got to tell you, my West Virginia accent really helped at the time because everyone else was calling from Marvel, DC, and other places. They were from New York. They were from LA. They had no accent, or they had a New York accent. And the first question I always got, are you from Texas? And I go, no, I'm from West Virginia. And I said, it's not anywhere near Richmond. And that was the first thing. And it was my door opening thing to tell them about West Virginia, to tell them about Marshall University, which I did. I even told them about my junior high, which is West Junior High. And we were known as the wrong side of the tracks back then. And even in this area, if you say West Ender, someone's going to have a story, and that's a good thing. And that's the way I always looked at West Virginia and Huntington and Marshall, anything I've been connected with as a door opener. I found out that I was different from everybody else that was in my business. So that was my foot in. I was on the business end. I was on the creative end. I got to do my first backup story, which was in Tim Truman's Scout comic book. And the reason I mentioned Tim Truman is he and I met at a convention in the early 80s before I got in here. And he goes, where are you from? I said, Huntington, West Virginia. He goes, I'm from Dixie, West Virginia. That was where he was originally from. And he lived in Pennsylvania. But that West Virginia connection got us connected. He connected me to the Eclipse job. And then he also got me my first writing job in a backup series in his book. So again, West Virginia, small town, the connection is there. And I realized it then, but I've never forgotten that through the whole thing. And occasionally I'd be at a convention, I'd talk to somebody, they go, well, I live in Bug Tussle, Louisiana, and, there's not much. I said, oh, I'd have to call them on it. Then I said, no, there's nothing but a chance for you to get in. And I would explain what happened to me. And I got to be honest with you, I'm a little quirky, but I'm not extraordinary or anything like that. I got a creative vent that I need to get out, and I was willing to do whatever I had to get it, because it was like voices in your head. The only way to get the voices out of your head is put them on paper. And that's I've ended up that's helped a lot of people by telling them that it doesn't matter what you talk like, it doesn't matter what you do. If you've got that creative urge, you need to put that into a conduit or an outlet somewhere. I mean, it just makes a huge difference. And I'm speaking just for me, in my opinion, and my what I've gone through. Sometimes my wife and I will be out, and this has gone through our 38-year marriage, where I'll say something that's hilarious in my head. It comes out my mouth. She's telling me it's not that funny, and but I've got to do it. And I do the same thing with the comic book scripts, the television, the video games, anything that I've written is I'm entertaining myself in a room by myself at the house. And I like that. And every once in a while I'll look down at the dog and, is that a good one? And, look at me. Yeah, sure. At least that's what it says in my head. So it's a thing I've always written. I can remember as a kid, I fill up notebooks constantly. I've got hundreds of them. But even as a kid, I wrote down stuff. If it was just my thoughts, I wrote all the time. And even if it was just 10 minutes a day during my lunch hour working at the Huntington Mall when it first opened up back in 1980, my half hour, I've got a half hour and 15 minutes of it was spent just writing down whatever I wanted to write, anything that came if I thought it was a good idea. And it's almost like, I guess, some addiction or something, but it was a good one. And I've always felt like that. And I'll be 70 this year, and that passion has never left. I still want to tell stories. I still want to create things all the time. And I don't know if any of you all have that urge, whether it's writing, drawing, whatever, but there's a world of opportunity for you all right now because of technology. And I say that because you're able to create, you're able to be a part of anything. If it's video games, if it's anime, if it's comic books, if it's television, there's a way to do it. And, if you're from here or a small town, that's not a hurdle anymore. It shouldn't be. If anything, you should market yourself as that because it's going to set you apart from a lot of other people. I did a book, it's outdated now because it's before the internet, but I did a book, How to Market Yourself in Comics. And I wish it was in print now, but it'd be outdated. But it sold very well. It was just very grassroots, dirt level stuff of how to get in, because it was my story of how I got in and what you do. So and it didn't matter the age, because it wasn't until I was 32, 33 before I got into the business. And most people in any kind of entertainment, they're fairly young. And with the television show, that didn't happen until I was 60. And that never happens, trust me. Which is kind of a neat story. Clint McElroy and his sons, who, again, from this area, I went to Marshall with. We met when we were in class and ended up trading comics. It happened to him at 60. He and his sons have My Brother and Me, The Adventure Zone, those incredibly successful podcasts, which they travel and sell out all across the country with that. And bang, he and I laughed at lunch one day. It happened while we were old farts. How often does that happen? It doesn't. And we're both very thankful and very grateful for it. But I would have to say, as far as motivation, it was that passion of wanting to tell stories. And another big part of it was just immaturity, because what kept me back for so long through school, my high school report card, all of you would be ashamed of it. Even a first marriage, this, that, the other, was immaturity was working against me. And finally, around 33, I found a way to channel that into not only something that's going to work for me, but a livelihood as well. Every once in a while, people talk about narcissists and sociopaths and psychopaths and how they can't feel empathy, this, that, the other. I just couldn't feel like an adult. So being whatever I am ended up, you can name the path, a path. I'm a boapath, which means immature. And it worked. It ended up, I found a way to make it work for me. And my point of this whole thing today is I don't care what your background is or anything like that. If you've got creativity, you may not ever get published. You may not ever have a television show or this and here, but you share it with your friends. You've got the internet to share that stuff with people of like-minded. I didn't know anybody else read comics when I was a kid. Every once in a while, you'd run across one kid that did, but you felt alone. I said, now you don't have to feel alone, and you share that. But if you write 10, 15 minutes a day. And next thing you know, it's a half hour, it's an hour. But the bottom line is you're writing, you're getting something out of it. If you're an artist, same way. If it's graphic design, there's just, again, so many things you can do just being creative. And that's why I fell into marketing all these years back, because that was a creative business. I understood. How can I make these people want to buy the comic books, graphic novels that my company publishes? And I had to be creative with me. I had to sell them Beau Smith before I could sell them the products we had. Because if they liked Beau Smith, if they trusted Beau Smith, or just thought he was nutty and I like to hear him talk for 15 or 20 minutes, they would pay attention. And they paid attention to the books. And when I started work for Todd McFarlane, there were 5 of us that worked for him. That was it, 91. And by the time I left in 2000, not only was, I'm not taking any credit for this, that was Todd's doing, but Spawn was still the #1 comic, and his toy company that everyone in the toy business said you cannot do was changing everything. Everyone was adapting and doing what he was doing. And it was a wonderful time to be with Image and to be with Todd McFarlane Productions then, because I got to see everything from ground zero. How, and Todd, country boy from Calgary, Alberta, who talks like Homer Simpson. And he would, I'll never forget, he called me up at 1 o'clock in the morning. I was watching some terrible movie. And he calls me up, Bud, we're starting a toy company next week. And I said, what? Yeah, we're going to do toys. I said, you're kidding. He goes, oh, no, we're going to do them. I said, okay, great. We started in on the whole thing. And then it wasn't a few years later, toy business is doing great and stuff. I'm sitting at home watching another terrible movie. He calls me up. He goes, Bud, I just bought Mark McGuire's baseball. I said, what? And I paid a few million for it. And I'm going, you did what? He goes, yeah. I said, send me a picture of it, in which those days meant putting it on the Xerox machine, taking it and faxing it to me. But being a part of all that, those first Image owner meetings, Image Comics was huge. And they separated from Marvel, and being there for that, probably the second or third actual Image meeting before it was Image, was incredible. You had Todd McFarlane, Rob Liefeld, Jim Lee, Will Spertasio, Eric Larson. You had everybody in the same room going, well, what are we going to do here? And Bo, what are we going to do about the distributors? And that was my point, to take what I learned at Eclipse and say, here's what we're going to do here, here, and there. And I kept saying, but the story's got to be, we're not going to worry about the stories. This is going to be good. We're going to rock. And that was their game plan at that point. But sure enough, they did. They became an amazing business, which, again, I got to learn so much from, and took to the next company, which was IDW Publishing, which all spawned from Image Comics, because Ted Adams, who created it, and the other guys were all from Jim Lee's Wildstorm Studios. And then I was from Todd's and Eclipse. And it was a different world. It was so, and I don't mean to get diarrhea of the mouth and get carried away on things like that. And a lot of my talks are thought, just thought process, like my writing. I don't speaking logical. It may not for everybody, but I ad lib on my head for weeks, sometimes months. I pulled one out. One of my latest comics is 15. The idea for it's 15 years old. I got one of my old notebooks out at the end of this year. So it's just for throw any If you haven't, you'll see that I never throw anything away. Look at my son Nick is there too. They can attest. Our house is. I had Bess upstairs at the table because she would kill me for saying this. But I mean, I hate to do this like everybody does, but we have any creative people in here? And I'm talking about in any. Raise your hand higher so I mean, I'm talking about anything creative. It may not. It could be making cupcakes. I don't know. There we go. I knew I'd get your hand up. There we go. But you can pertain this to life too. I mean, you can get creative about a lot of stuff, guys. And there's no excuse to yourself. That's the way I want it. There's no one to apologize for. If you're creative about something, share it. Do it and share it. You'll feel good because you get it out, but you'll feel even better when you share it with somebody. And whether they like it or can give you like a good family member or friend could constructive criticism, that's huge because that's very helpful. I hate to, and I'm trying not to get maudlin about anything, but I love what I do. I mean, I still love it as much now as I did when I was 4 years old, and that'd be 1958, and I'll have that till a croak, which hopefully will be many years from now. But and that's just because I want to entertain you all longer. But I'd like to kind of end that part of it right there, and I'd really like to know questions you all have about not my career so much or anything like it, but anything in general like that. We got the mic up there, and me, I love to talk. So, and then don't be hesitant either. I mean, that's or you can yell it from your seat, whatever you want to do. We may have to bend down to talk to that microphone. There we go.
Now, you're known for writing letters, and so do you have any stories from, where you wrote the letter and then the response that came back?
Well, a lot of the letters of comment that I wrote always have a good ending because they were getting letters to put in their comic strip or a comic book, and it was usually thank you for writing, and I never got like the internet is today. I never got belligerent or anything like that. What it brought for me were good relationships with these editors and with these people, but at the same time, is like the internet. Your name back then, your name and address and everything was on there, so anybody could write you. And after I had like 300 or so printed, I'd get some strange letters. And I can remember I had two that I had to actually take to the post office and go, hey, this person wants to kill me because I didn't like this issue of the X-Men. And I mean, it was an in-depth, very well-written letter about how they were going to murder me. And so I gave it to them and they did all their stuff. They ended up finding out and it was just some kid that was really ticked off and had a great vocabulary. But, but I mean, it was a good enough writing to where it fooled me to where I thought, I'm a dead man. And I was probably 30 years old at the time. And the other one was, was from this girl named Mindy. And Mindy was telling me, oh, I really like your letter. Mindy sent a lot of letters. And Mindy's letters got more amorous with each one. And, I was sitting there and I was a married guy and stuff, so I wasn't putting too much into it and going, well, where were you at 17 kind of a thing. But I said, this is getting kind of, even at that point, and this is me, I said, this is getting kind of creepy. So I took it and I gave it to the people at the post office. And once again, they inspected and traced that down. And Mindy was more of a Morty. And Morty had some strange ideas. And they ended up, finding this, guy who was a huge fan of mine, but thought, well, you'd never talk to me if I said my emotions and you knew my name was Morty and blah, blah, blah. And, it was an odd type of thing and everything was done in its way. But yeah, that's a good question. And I bet you're real sorry you brought it up now. It was, that's a great way of putting it because it really was. But, the weird letters, there were, two, maybe three, but the great letters and the response outnumber that by so many. I mean, and then the letters I started sending once I started pitching stories, I've still got those. They're upstairs in the attic, and I've got hundreds, at least it used to be hundreds before I had one office that burnt down, of rejection letters. And let me tell you a little quick thing about that. Never, ever take a rejection letter serious and never take it personal. Let's put it that way. Take it serious if they don't send you a form and they're sending you some critiques and some honest answers. But as far as personal feelings, don't ever take it personal because it's not just the fact that they even answered your, and gave you rejection is a huge thing. That never fazed me a bit. Never stopped me because I knew I had to write comic books. So that was a good question. I'm sorry I drug it out there for you. See, that okay. That leads me into being in sixth grade. It was my birthday. Mom and Dad, what do you want for Christmas? You want a bike? No. I want to call Stan Lee at Marvel Comics. Well, who's Stan Lee? And I had to explain that to him. And I mean, I was persistent. You sure you don't want a bike? Yeah. And long distance calls were not free back then, and they were very expensive. At least to my sixth grade knowledge. But they ended up looking in the phone book or calling the operator and getting Marvel Comics, and they called the office, and I right there on the phone, and Flo Steinberg, who was Stan Lee's personal assistant, answered the phone, and Flo was probably at that age. She was probably 23, out of college, and she was great. I found out many years later, but she was just incredible. And well, you can't really talk to Stan right now because he's in the next room writing next month's Spider-Man. I said, oh, what's it going to be about? And she kind of, told me a little bit, and she asked me, but she started asking me, what grade are you in? I said, 6. Where do you go to school? What things do you like to do? What's your favorite comic? And why do you like Stan's writing so well? And, I was, wow, she's talking to me, asking about me. I want to talk to Stan, but that was huge right there. She was listening to me, paid attention, and she was asking me questions about something I was passionate about. So she talked to me for 20 minutes, maybe a half hour at the most. But she did ask me, she goes, now, where was it you lived again? So I gave her, our address and stuff. And I said, and here's my phone number in case Stan wants to call me back. And well, I didn't, hung up, and I was real thrilled with just all of that stuff. And I really, you're busy in sixth grade, out running, setting things on fire and things like that. So 2 weeks later, I get a package in the mail. And in that package is a couple of Marvel Comics signed by Stan Lee and a little note, dear Steve Areno. And he called me Steve Areno. Oh, I tried to make the kids at school call me that for a while, but they wouldn't do it. But that package in there was a note from her in there, said, Stan, sorry he didn't have time that day, but he wanted you to have these. And I just, that shows you your dream can come true, no matter how big or how little it is. And I just was never afraid to, on a passionate thing like that, to go that extra mile to bother somebody. But and I was lucky enough to where I had lunch with Stan twice. Once was at Pittsburgh Con, and this was me in the middle of my career. Everything was going fine, but it was me, Stan, and 2 other people. And this was before Stan became the public icon that he was, where now everyone knows his name. But back then, you had to still been in comics a little bit. And, Stan was notorious for not remembering names and everything. Hey, bud, he was like that. But I told him that. I said, Stan, you're not going to remember any of this. But he goes, that's the kind of stuff. He goes, we had kids come in the office. They would come in, stumble into the office and, hey, where's this? And he goes, and, if we had the time, we would. He goes, Flo was great at taking care of it, making sure everybody felt special. And that alone was huge. I said, yeah, I thought the bullpen. He goes, no, he goes, the guys would drop off hard every once in a while. He goes, but most of the time it was me, Flo, and he goes, maybe, some of the guys that did uh, paste ups and stuff like that. But all that time we were eating lunch, here he is treating me as an equal in the business. And I'm sitting there going, I was sitting with Stanley at lunch. I was 12 years old. I mean, it was just, and then I ran into him at another seminar thing that we did. And at least he goes, glad to see that beard still in good shape. Wasn't hey Beau, he didn't remember, but he remembered the beard, so. And Jack Kirby, I got to meet him on my first convention I ever went to in Chicago, first time I'd ever flown. On the shuttle bus, I look back there and there's Jack and Roz, his wife, and they're sitting back there. And I went, that's Jack Kirby. That's Jack Kirby. So, gosh, I knew who he was because I'd seen his picture. And this is 1981, 82. And so, again, what do I got to lose? I came, introduced myself. I said, yeah, it's my first convention, first time I've flown. So he goes, oh, really? He goes, well, that's where we're headed. And oh, yeah, I know. And we sat and we just talked. He started asking me questions about what I liked about Marvel Comics and what point, not about him and his work, but about all of it in storytelling. I said, no. He goes, do you draw? I said, no, I can't draw a straight line with a ruler. I said, but a write. And he goes, well, what kind of stuff? So we talked about that. Anyway, we're getting in there. He goes, come with us. Come on. We'll get you checked in. I said, okay. So I got my bags. I got theirs. And, we're carrying him in. And he walks right up to the hotel registry part. He goes, this is my friend, Beau Smith. He goes, this is the first time he's been here. He wants to make sure that you guys reservations and all this stuff. And they were just like, oh, okay. And then he did him and Roz. And then he tells me, he goes, now my panels tomorrow is at, let's say 1:00. He goes, make sure you come down and you tell the guy at the front that you're my friend. I said, well, isn't it really going to kind of be doing it? He goes, I'm going to take care of it. And I went down the next day to the thing and I said, well, I'm a friend of Jack Kirby's. My name's Beau Smith. He goes, oh yeah, come on there. Put me up in the other row up there. And at one point in his talk that he was doing, he goes, glad to see my friend Beau Smith's here. We came in yesterday together. And I'm just going, I'm not kidding. If he was a woman, I would have married him right there on the spot. I mean, I was melting. This was beyond my wildest dreams, but his kindness flows, stands, and then all the people that work in comics that helped me before, whether it was just tips or actually doing stuff, Tim Truman, all the rest of them. Part of my thing that I want to do is pass that on to the next person in any way I can, if it's how small, how big, because they showed me kindness they didn't have to do. They, good to meet you, bang, that would have been it. But no, they showed me kindness to a guy that talked funny that they didn't know from Adam and who was a little old to be a fan of comics, that kind of a thing. And that's meant the world to me. So that's something I've tried to do. My wife, Beth, loves everyone. She never meets a stranger. I'm introvert, cynical, and don't trust a whole lot of people right off the bat. But she's a constant, encouragement to be like that. Tim Rozon, who is plays Doc Holliday on our show Winona Earp. Yeah, he's young enough to be one of my sons, but he's very selfless. He's a very kind person. And I'll even find myself sometimes, and we've become good friends, is when I'm feeling like being the turd that I really am, I will go, would Tim do that to somebody or say that? Nah, because then, I can be despisable, I guess, or agitated. But people like that can be little inspirations for you, that's a big deal. And I don't know what that has to do with comic books, but that's what keeps me in and doing this. So I'll put it that way. Anybody else got a question before I rattle on? Yes, go right ahead. The biggest risk I've ever taken in my career was probably when I was sitting on the tailgate of my truck and I knew I had to support myself, but I also, I had to take a shot at doing comic books. And it seemed, back then you had to be from New York or Los Angeles to be in it. You really did. And that wasn't going to happen. I wasn't going to move to someplace. This is where I love. This is what, even once I was doing marketing for all those companies, I stayed here. When I left Todd McFarlane in 2000, it was because he was consolidating everything to Arizona. And I had Dana and Brad. Well, Brad wasn't in college, but Dana was in college. Nick was in high school, and my mother was still alive. So I didn't want to. Those were my choices. I said, no, I'm gonna stay with family. But that was probably the biggest, because that was probably the first time in my life I really felt stress of what should I do with this decision. And but making a stab at comic books, which is what I wanted to do, writing is what I had to do. I never had video games, television, or any of the other stuff in line. That never was. I was doing comics. I already hit in the high point, and that was probably the biggest risk right there. I would say having kids was a big risk, but it wasn't. I was glad I was stupid and thought, well, my mom and dad did it. I can do it. And I never thought a thing about it. On my days off, Nick went with me, and I'd carry him in that little basket, and I'd take him everywhere I went. But, life didn't change per se. Hey, and he ended up liking the same cartoons I did, so I watched those. And when Beth and I got married, Brad and Dana were 8 and 10 then, and I got to tell you, I couldn't have written that script any better. They never once, "You're not my dad. I don't have to do what you say." And and their father is here. I'll give you a quick story. Their father, his name is Rocky, and his brother's name is Beau Smith. So, and he's a good friend of mine. But Rocky and I are very good friends. In fact, we always threaten Beth that we're going to compare notes on her one day. But that's been another blessing. I couldn't have written that script. And the boys, all three of them have been brothers from day one. Beth and I make fun of them when they're not around the house, telling old stories about what we would hear them saying in the bedroom when they're back there playing a game or goofing off and this, that, and the other. And it was, I'll never forget that one time. They were back there. Nick was probably 4 years old, and I heard him back there, and we'd made him do something they didn't want to do. And Nick was back there, "Well, Dad's not so tough." And Brad goes, "I saw him pick up the lawnmower the other day." Like that was some feat of strength. And they all back, "Oh, yeah, picked up the lawnmower." So, that's, and again, I've taken your question and paraded it around like a dog. I'm sorry. But yes, that was my biggest risk, was showing up in here and you all giving me questions on that. Someone else want to take the chance? Heather? You can yell at me like everybody else. No, I'm kidding.
Thank you for being here. Is this on? Okay. My name's Heather, and I'm the academic advisor for the Honors College. And you've said a couple of things today and also on your interview on WMUL with Mac Wheeler that I would like to incorporate into my academic advising with your permission. You have talked about kind of diversifying. You are an artist, but also you learned fairly early that you needed to also be marketing. That's really great advice. So that's even a branch of advising called parallel planning. So we're trying to let students know that they need to be thinking about not choosing a completely different major, but choose something that will enhance what you're already doing. So that's really great advice. And also being authentically who you are. There's a staggering amount of talent at Marshall University and in the Appalachian region. And I think instead of trying to fit into the mold of, Middle America, what have you, to own that. I think that is so great. And I will give you credit. But I think that's really great
yeah.
to share that with my
I would be honored, as they say. I would. I mean, seriously, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so
Anytime I feel like I can contribute to society, that's a good thing. Thank you, Heather. Yes. Then I should be able to answer that one. Yes, that definitely did. I'd gone through Winona Earp being optioned 3 different times. Once very early when the book first came out, Peter Linkoff in Los Angeles optioned it. And at that time, he was a young up and comer, very aggressive, very good. And I thought, well, I'll give this an 18-month try. And he wasn't able to do anything. He wasn't able to sell it then. And I think that was due to him being young in the business and just starting to make his connections. I wish it would have happened later because he's the showrunner and the guy that did put on Hawaii Five-0, the new Magnum PI, and multiple movies. So at least I was in good company then. Then we were optioned a few years later by Fox, and it was at the same time that they had optioned Fringe, Dollhouse, and then Winona Earp. So there's J.J. Abrams, Joss Whedon, and Beau Smith. Well, those 2 shows got put on the air, and just as it was Winona Earp's turn, that's when the writer's strike happened and a new regime came into Fox, and they were going, yeah, we're not going to renew the option at that point. So I said, okay, I understood. By that point, it had been optioned, and a lot of people had asked about it before. But again, like the rejection letters, I knew not to take any of that stuff personally, and I didn't. I just, somebody would go, oh, I thought that got optioned. Yeah, well, it didn't work out. And when they showed me the baby, then it happened, that kind of a thing. So when sci-fi came around, Ted Adams, the CEO of IDW, kept saying, Beau, they're interested. Sci-fi's interested. And I said, well, great. Let me know when, some movement happens. And he called another week. Beau, they're interested and they're wanting to know about this. That's great. Let me know when the next step happens. So finally he goes, they've got a spec script for the pilot. They've got a Winona Earp Bible, and they've got, want to know your take on this, whether we can move forward. And by then, producers, production, everything is starting to be a part of it. And I said, well, this is as far as it's ever gotten. Yeah, I'll send it to me. So it was a Friday when I got it. I read the pilot over the weekend. I read the Bible of it, and a lot of emails were going back and forth between me, the showrunner, and things. And my immediate reaction was, oh, this isn't my Winona Earp, oh, blah, blah, blah. But then I started, again, glad I took the weekend to do it, because Winona had been published probably 20 years by then. And I had my audience of males 15 to 55. It was great. We always did good. We weren't a household name, but we weren't Deadpool or Wolverine or anything. But in the comic book world, it sold the same amount. It was good. And I thought, well, to get it to the next level, I'm going to have to entrust somebody that's their business. And the people, Emily Andrus, the showrunner and head writer, and 724, the production, I had to say, I got to trust these people to do what they do best. If they were coming to me to do a comic book on a TV show, they would have to trust me. So it was the same thing. And I only had 2 minor changes that I made in the whole thing. And I mean, they were actually fairly minor, but it just wasn't what I wanted. Other than that, I said, let's have at it. And they called me then going, it's all right if we do this is all before anything was ever done. And I said, yeah, that sounds good. And every once in a while they'd refer, Beau, what does she feel about this, the character? What's this? Bobo Del Rey, tell me. And they were earth-shattering things, but they were checking. And sure enough, one thing led to another. Next thing you know, we're filming. It's in Canada with all Canadian crew, because you get a huge tax break if you go to a certain place and do that. And the changes, I mean, they even changed the color of her hair from blonde to brunette. And I'd always written Winona Earp at 40 to 45 years old at the top of her game in the U.S. Marshals. Because at that time in comics, 96, everyone was doing barbed wire and young girls and this, which is fine. But I wanted an audience served that wasn't getting served, and that was 40 to 45. And if it was going to be a strong female character, I wanted her to have the experience of a career that she, has taken hold of. So Emily goes, won't we turn it? And she's 27 and just starting out, and she's not the best at it. She's learning and she's doing it. I said, love it. That's great. She goes, and this is before she gets blonde hair, so she's got brunette. And I said, perfect. And in my head, Emily gave me that idea right there. I said, so one day I want to take an issue of Winona Earp or an story arc, and explain why her hair is blonde. So that's an upcoming Easter egg for all of you all for and it's not going to be just a cosmetic thing. It's going to be, there's a reason. And I'll go be honest with you, in season 0, the trade paperback that we've got out there at the table, there's a hint. It's all I'm going to leave it at. There's a hint in there of why that happens. And it's going to be a major part. But she was able to take that, and they put that on on television. Everything was great. We'd go up once a year for a few days to be on location with each season. We even took the boys up. I think it was the 2nd season, guys. Yeah, we took them with us, and that was the best family vacation we've ever had. But where was it? I get family. I get so sentimental and get drunk. No. But oh yeah, they took it, and I'm gonna cut because I see her doing this here in a minute. I went from having a fan base, which I still have and had, but all of a sudden now I've got women 15 to 55. I've got a lot of older people, which by that I mean my age, who I know that. I'm going to watch that show. And everyone loves the fact that Winona Earp, Melanie Scrofano, who plays it, is a nut buster. I mean, I'll just put it, she is, she's funny. There's heart, there's humor, and there's family in that show. And I said, that's the part that I've always done in the comics. I said, and Emily, the only thing I really ask is that she be likable. I said, that's what I strive with every character, good guy or bad guy. There's got to be an ounce of it, or there's got to be a Texas size whole of it. I said, but they've got to be likable, because who wants to emotionally commit to an unlikable character? Not me. Or even an unlikable, I could write pure evil bad guys all day long. That's easy. That's simple, because you just, but you got to add a quirkiness. It's like with Bobo Del Rey in the comic book. The part that set him away from other drug-running vampires was the fact the Andy Griffith Show was his favorite thing in the world. No one disturbed him when he watched it. They all gathered around the TV like 1950s, nuclear family, him and all the other vampires, to watch the Andy Griffith Show. And one of the drug dealers, another cartel guy, was coming in to do a business deal with him, and he dared to interrupt during the Andy Griffith Show and said, "That Aunt B, she's a mouthy broad." Bobo kills him right there on the spot, because as he said, you don't diss Aunt B. So there was this one part of Bobo Del Rey that all these readers were going, I mean, the book's good, the story's, but they're going, man, that was it. That's the scene they remember, because that was the one they related to. That's the one that resonated with them. So always try to add that to anything that I'm writing. When I wrote Guy Gardner for DC for 2.5 years, one of the Green Lanterns, he was a one joke character that got hit by Batman. He was just shown as a jerk all the time and stuff. His book was about to get canceled. And they go, "You want to come in and do 3 or 4 issues before we cancel?" I said, "Yeah, sure." But my secret agenda was, I'm going to make people like him. And within probably the 5th issue, we'd gone from, back then sales were 40,000. We ended up to 65,000, which now people would be dancing on the table, for that number. But back then that was a low number, but it was going up. And I achieved in 2.5 years what I wanted to. He ended up being this likable character. I brought back all these DC characters that everyone had forgotten about. They became his supporting cast. And he had a bar called Warriors that was just for superheroes to hang out at, so they'd have a place they didn't have to, no paparazzi, this, that, the other. And that was so fun to do. And the 29th issue was this big gatefold open. It was the opening of Warriors. And the whole book, there wasn't a lot of action like you see in comics, but it was all these superheroes interacting, talking to each other, wisecracking each other, just like normal people would. And I've been so lucky to get those chances to add likability to comics. If I croak and they'll go, Beau Smith wrote comics and he make characters likable, that would be a great thing to put on the comic book tombstone. So long way around the barn, there we go. Right there in the back. To be honest with you, well, I'd say that about which son is my favorite, but I don't like any of them. I would say that's hard. Uh, I've got it's that is Guy Gardner is not mine. I did not create him, but I had a great time on it. The Black Terror was a book that was my dad's favorite comic book character that I brought back in 89, 90. And I still think that 3-issue miniseries stands up to anything. And this is not conceit or anything like this, but I'm talking about depth. It stands up to The Watchmen. It stands up to Sandman, any of these seriously taken comic books. And it's a crime story. It's more the superhero Cobb, which is about nowadays you would equate it with Reacher. It's that kind of a story. He's a former Secret Service agent who has, like I was born to love comics. He was born to protect people. He can't explain it either. He's just born to protect people. So Cobb would be another one. Winona Earp, of course, and that's grown more to be a favorite too since the television show because I accumulated another family. The cast and the crew are like family to Beth and I, and you can't ask for more than that because if that would have been, I'm not getting on it, but if that had been a CBS, NBC network, I would be given the check when it was due, and show up on the set one day, and that would have been it. They would have changed anything. They would not have been gracious enough to ask my opinions. Contractually, they don't have to on Winona Earp, but they did from day one and through the series. Always, Beau, what do you think of this? Hey, that's the highest compliment you could get. So, I got to say, a lot of them are favorite. I got a lot that aren't my favorites. That would have been easier. Oh my gosh, I did an issue of Shadowhawk where they wanted a Western. Beau, can you do a Western? I said, yeah, I can do it. Well, the character's name's got to be Saddlehawk. And right there, I didn't like that name. And so I did the story under duress. I got paid well to do it and stuff, but I read it now and when I do, I won't read it, but I come across it now going, why did you do that? Oh, so yeah, that would have been easier. Which one do I dislike the most? That would probably be it. Yes.
Thank you very much, Beau, for being here with us. And
I
thank you guys for all for
appreciate it.
coming. So
Thank you all. If you all get a chance, stop by the table and you can look at all the madness that I've written. So
Yes, definitely stop by the table, just upstairs.
my wife
next
is
to the
nice.
elevator.
Don't like talking to her.
Yes, that's adorable. She's so sweet. So, but thank you guys for coming.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye.